The rain came down in sheets that late October afternoon, turning the streets of Queens into rivers of gray. Emma Collins stood behind the counter of the Sunset Diner, watching the water cascade down the large front windows, distorting the neon signs across the street into blurry smears of red and blue. The diner was nearly empty, just old Mr. Peterson in his usual corner booth, nursing his third cup of coffee while reading yesterday's newspaper, and a young couple sharing fries near the jukebox that hadn't worked in years. Emma wiped down the already clean counter for the third time in 10 minutes, her movements automatic after 5 years of working at the diner. At 26, she'd begun to wonder if this was all there would ever be. The smell of grease and coffee, the worn linoleum floors, the flickering fluorescent lights that hummed constantly overhead. She'd come to New York with dreams like everyone else, dreams of something more, something brighter. But dreams didn't pay the rent on her tiny studio apartment in Astoria, and they certainly didn't cover her mother's medical bills back in Ohio. "Emma, honey, you planning to wipe a hole through that counter?" Dolores, the evening cook, called from the kitchen window. At 62, Dolores had been working at the Sunset longer than Emma had been alive. Her weathered face held a kindness that had gotten Emma through more difficult shifts than she could count. "Sorry, Dolores, just watching the rain." Emma set down her cloth and glanced at the clock. 6:15. Another hour and 15 minutes until her shift ended. Then home to her quiet apartment, maybe heat up some leftover soup, watch something mindless on her laptop until exhaustion pulled her under. It wasn't a bad life, she reminded herself. It was safe, predictable. After the chaos of her childhood, her father's drinking, the constant moving, the uncertainty, predictable was exactly what she'd wanted. She'd chosen this quiet existence deliberately, built it carefully like a wall against the world's harshness. The bell above the door chimed, and Emma looked up with her practiced smile already in place. "Welcome to Sunset." The words died in her throat. The man who stumbled through the door was tall, well over 6 feet, his broad shoulders hunched against the rain. But it wasn't his size that made Emma's breath catch. It was the blood. Dark stains spread across his white dress shirt, visible even beneath the black suit jacket that hung awkwardly on his frame. His left hand pressed against his side, and Emma could see crimson seeping between his fingers. For a moment, everything seemed to freeze. The man's eyes, a striking gray that seemed almost silver in the diner's harsh lighting, swept the room before landing on Emma. He took one step forward, then another, his movements controlled despite the obvious pain etched across his sharp features. "Please," he said, his voice deep and rough, barely above a whisper. "I need—" His legs buckled. Emma moved without thinking, rushing from behind the counter. She caught him before he hit the ground, though his weight nearly took them both down. Up close, she could see the pallor of his skin, the tight line of his jaw, the way his dark hair stuck to his forehead with a mixture of rain and sweat. "Mr. Peterson, call an ambulance," Emma shouted, struggling to support the man's weight. "No." The stranger's hand shot out, gripping Emma's wrist with surprising strength. His eyes locked onto hers, intense and pleading. "No hospitals, no police, please." Emma's heart hammered against her ribs. Every rational part of her brain screamed danger. This man was clearly involved in something illegal, something violent. The smart thing, the safe thing, would be to let him go, call the authorities, and wash her hands of whatever trouble followed him through that door. But then she saw it. Beneath the hardness in his eyes, beneath the controlled facade even pain couldn't completely crack, a desperate vulnerability that reminded her of a wounded animal. And Emma had never been able to turn away from suffering, no matter how much safer it would be. "Dolores, get the first aid kit from the office," Emma called, making her decision. "Mr. Peterson, you didn't see anything. Understand?" The old man looked between Emma and the stranger, then slowly folded his newspaper. "See what? I've been reading this whole time." He stood, dropped a few bills on the table, and shuffled toward the door. "You be careful, Emma girl." The young couple had already slipped out during the commotion, leaving their fries half-eaten on the table. "Can you walk?" Emma asked the stranger. He nodded once, his jaw tight. "Back room. Come on." Supporting most of his weight, Emma half-dragged, half-guided him through the swinging kitchen door. Dolores pressed herself against the counter to let them pass, her eyes wide but her expression carefully neutral. She'd worked in Queens long enough to know when not to ask questions. The back room was small and cluttered with supplies, boxes of napkins, industrial-sized containers of ketchup and mustard, spare aprons hanging on hooks. Emma cleared a space on the metal preparation table, and the stranger eased himself onto it with a barely suppressed groan. Let me see, Emma said, reaching for his jacket. He caught her hand again, gentler this time. You don't have to do this. It's not safe for you. Emma met his gaze steadily, ignoring the trembling in her hands. You're bleeding in my diner. Let me see. After a moment's hesitation, he released her hand and shrugged out of his jacket. The white shirt beneath was ruined, soaked through with blood. Emma's stomach turned, but she forced herself to remain calm. She'd taken a basic first aid course when she first started at the diner. Dolores had insisted on it, but this was far beyond anything she'd practiced on plastic dummies. The shirt needs to come off, she said, proud that her voice remained steady. The stranger began unbuttoning with his right hand, his left still pressed against the wound. When he pulled the fabric away, Emma saw the source of the bleeding, a deep gash across his left side just below his ribs. It looked like a knife wound, clean and straight, but dangerously deep. Dolores appeared with the first aid kit, setting it on the table without a word. She also brought a bottle of whiskey from the cabinet where they kept the cooking wine, along with a stack of clean kitchen towels. Thank you, Emma whispered. Dolores squeezed her shoulder. I'll watch the front. You holler if you need me. She paused at the door. And Emma? Lock this door behind me. Once Dolores was gone and the lock clicked into place, Emma turned back to the stranger. Her hands shook as she opened the first aid kit, taking stock of what she had to work with. Gauze, medical tape, antiseptic, tweezers, a small sewing kit that Dolores kept for emergency button repairs. You'll need to stitch it, the stranger said, reading her thoughts. His voice was calmer now, though she could see the effort it took. It's too deep for just pressure. I'm not a doctor, Emma protested, even as she reached for the sewing kit. I'm a waitress. I've never... You're what I have right now. He leaned back against the wall, his gray eyes never leaving her face. What's your name? Emma. Emma Collins. Emma. He said it slowly, as if testing the weight of it. Don't tell me, she interrupted, threading a needle with trembling fingers. I don't want to know your name. I don't want to know what happened to you or who did this. I'm going to patch you up, and then you're going to leave, and we're both going to forget this ever happened. Agreed? A ghost of a smile crossed his face, there and gone so quickly she might have imagined it. Agreed. Emma poured whiskey over the needle and thread, then over the wound itself. The stranger's jaw clenched, a muscle ticking in his cheek, but he made no sound. She pressed a clean towel to the wound, applying pressure until the bleeding slowed to a seep. This is going to hurt, she warned. I know. Emma had sewn plenty of things in her life. Buttons, torn aprons, the stuffed rabbit she'd had since childhood, but never human skin. The needle pierced the flesh at the edge of the wound, and she felt the resistance, felt the wrongness of it. The stranger's breath hissed between his teeth, but he remained perfectly still. Tell me something, he said after a moment, his voice strained. To distract me. Tell me about yourself. Emma focused on making the stitches as small and even as possible, trying not to think about the fact that she was sewing a person. There's not much to tell. I work here. I live in Astoria. I'm from Ohio originally. Why New York? Same reason as everyone else. I thought it would be different. Better. She finished one stitch and started another. I thought I could be someone here. And? Did you become someone? Emma laughed, a bitter sound. I became a waitress who's stitching up a bleeding stranger in the back of a diner. Not exactly what I had in mind. You're saving someone's life, he said quietly. That's something. She glanced up at his face. Even pale and in pain, he was striking. Sharp cheekbones, a strong jaw darkened with stubble, those unusual gray eyes that seemed to see too much. There was something about him, something that suggested power and danger, and a life completely foreign to her own quiet existence. Who are you? She asked, then immediately shook her head. No, forget I asked. I don't want to know. Smart, he agreed. The less you know, the safer you are. They fell into silence as Emma worked, her confidence growing with each stitch. The bleeding had mostly stopped now, and the wound was closing under her careful ministrations. She lost track of time, aware of nothing but the needle, the thread, the warmth of his skin under her fingers. The rain continued its assault on the building, a steady drumming that seemed to isolate them from the rest of the world. In this small back room, with the fluorescent lights buzzing overhead, and the smell of antiseptic mixing with the ever-present aroma of coffee and grease, Emma felt suspended in a moment outside of normal life. You're good at this, the stranger observed, watching her work. I used to sew a lot as a kid. My mom taught me. She'd make all our clothes because we couldn't afford to buy new ones. Emma tied off another stitch. I hated it then. Hated being the girl with the homemade dresses that never quite looked right, but I guess it came in handy after all. Your mother, she's in Ohio, in a nursing home, early onset dementia. Emma's hands paused for just a moment before continuing. She doesn't remember who I am most days, but the facility is good and that's expensive, so I work here and I send money home every month. That's my life. Not very exciting. It's honest, he said. That's worth more than you might think. Emma finished the last stitch and tied it off carefully. The wound was closed, her stitches not quite as neat as a surgeon's would be, but functional. She cleaned the area again with antiseptic, then covered it with gauze and medical tape. Done, she said, stepping back. Her hands were shaking again now that the immediate crisis was over, and there was blood on her uniform. His blood. The reality of what she'd just done hit her all at once, and she had to grip the edge of the table to steady herself. The stranger sat up slowly, testing the stitches. Thank you, Emma Collins. I won't forget this. Please do, she said, trying to inject some lightness into her voice. Seriously, forget this, forget me, just go get proper medical attention and forget this ever happened. He slid off the table, reaching for his ruined shirt. Emma grabbed a spare t-shirt from the lost and found box in the corner. Someone had left it months ago. A plain black shirt that would be too small for him, but better than nothing. Here, she offered. He took it, pulling it on carefully. It stretched across his broad chest and shoulders, but it covered the bandages. He shrugged into his jacket, and despite the bloodstains, despite the too small shirt beneath, he somehow managed to look composed, in control. How much do I owe you? He asked, reaching into his jacket pocket. Nothing, I don't want your money. Emma busied herself cleaning up the medical supplies, disposing of the bloody towels. Just leave, please. Emma, I mean it. I helped you because you needed help, not for payment. Now go, before whoever did this to you comes looking. He studied her for a long moment, those gray eyes unreadable. Then he nodded once. Lock the door behind me. Tell anyone who asks that you were in the back doing inventory and didn't see anything. I know how this works, Emma said quietly. I've lived in New York long enough. The stranger moved toward the back exit, then paused with his hand on the door. You have a kind heart, Emma Collins. In my world, that's dangerous. Be careful. I'm always careful, she replied. Being careful is what I do best. He looked like he wanted to say something else, but instead, he simply opened the door and stepped out into the rain. Emma watched as he disappeared into the alley, swallowed by shadows and falling water. Then she locked the door, leaned against it, and let out a breath she didn't realize she'd been holding. Her hands were still shaking. There was blood under her fingernails. The whole encounter felt surreal, like something from a movie rather than her actual life. But the evidence was there. The bloodied towels in the trash, the depleted first aid kit, the lingering smell of whiskey and antiseptic. Emma washed her hands 3 times before the water ran clear, scrubbing until her skin felt raw. Then she changed out of her blood-stained uniform into the spare she kept in her locker, stuffed the ruined one into a plastic bag to throw away on her way home. When she emerged from the back room, Dolores was wiping down tables, her movements casual and unhurried. Everything all right back there? The older woman asked without looking up. Everything's fine, just had to reorganize some supplies. Dolores moved to the next table. You know, I didn't see a thing tonight, just a quiet evening at the diner. Thank you, Dolores. Don't thank me. Just promise me you'll be extra careful for the next few days. Lock your doors, keep your eyes open. Emma felt a chill that had nothing to do with the cold air seeping through the diner's old windows. You think whoever hurt him might come back? I think, Dolores said slowly, that a man who gets himself cut like that and refuses hospitals is involved in something heavy, and heavy things have a way of getting heavier before they get lighter. She finally looked at Emma, her expression serious. You did a good thing helping him, but good things don't always keep you safe, honey. Remember that. The rest of Emma's shift passed in a blur. She served the few customers who braved the rain, refilled coffee cups, cleared tables, all while trying not to think about the stranger. But his face kept appearing in her mind. Those gray eyes, the way he'd said her name, the quiet intensity in his voice when he thanked her. She tried to tell herself it didn't matter. He was gone. She'd never see him again. This was just a strange blip in her otherwise ordinary life, a story she might tell someday, years from now, when it had faded enough to seem unreal. At 7:30, right on schedule, Emma's replacement arrived. She clocked out, grabbed her jacket and the plastic bag with her ruined uniform and headed for the door. The rain had lessened to a drizzle, but the streets were still slick and dark. The walk to the subway was only 3 blocks, but Emma found herself looking over her shoulder more than usual. Every shadow seemed to hide potential danger. Every car that passed made her tense. By the time she descended into the warm, stale air of the subway station, her heart was racing. "Get a grip," she muttered to herself, swiping her Metro card. "He's gone. It's over." The subway car was half full with the usual mix of evening commuters, office workers heading home late, service industry employees like herself, a few teenagers laughing over someone's phone. Emma found a seat and leaned her head against the scratched plastic window, watching the tunnel walls blur past. She thought about her mother, probably already asleep in her room at the nursing home, surrounded by photos of a daughter she no longer recognized. She thought about the bills waiting in her mailbox, the student loans from the 2 years of college she'd managed before running out of money, the slow accumulation of small debts that never quite seemed to diminish. She thought about the stranger's words. "You're saving someone's life, that's something. Was it enough? Was any of this enough? The careful, quiet life she'd built, the safety she'd chosen over risk, the predictability she'd craved so desperately after her chaotic childhood?" Emma didn't have an answer. She only knew that for a few strange, intense minutes tonight, she'd felt fully alive in a way she hadn't in years. Scared? Yes. Uncertain? Absolutely. But alive. The thought both thrilled and terrified her. By the time Emma reached her apartment building, exhaustion had settled into her bones. She climbed the 3 flights of stairs to her studio, fumbled with her keys, and finally pushed open the door to her small sanctuary. It wasn't much. A single room with a kitchenette along one wall, a bathroom barely big enough to turn around in, a futon that served as both couch and bed. But it was hers, paid for with her own hard work, and it was safe. Emma dropped her bag on the floor, kicked off her shoes and moved through her evening routine on autopilot. Heat up soup, eat standing at the counter, wash the bowl, change into her sleep shirt, brush her teeth. Only when she was finally lying on her futon, staring at the cracks in the ceiling that she'd long ago named and assigned personalities to, did she let herself really think about what had happened. She'd stitched up a man who'd been stabbed, a man who'd refused medical help, who'd disappeared into the rain without even telling her his name, a man involved in something dangerous enough to get him hurt, maybe dangerous enough to get anyone around him hurt too. She should be scared. She should be worried. She should probably tell someone, though who would she tell? The police? And say what? That she'd helped someone evade proper medical treatment? Instead, she found herself wondering if he'd made it somewhere safe, if her stitches would hold, if he was in pain right now wherever he was. "Stop it," Emma whispered to the empty room. "He's gone. You'll never see him again. Let it go." Outside, the rain had started up again, pattering against her single window. The sound was almost soothing, a white noise that usually helped her sleep. But tonight Emma lay awake for hours, unable to shake the memory of gray eyes and a deep voice saying her name. When she finally drifted off, her dreams were full of shadows and blood and a stranger's face she couldn't quite forget. Emma woke to her alarm at 5:30 a.m., the early morning light barely filtering through her thin curtains. For a moment, still caught between sleep and waking, she thought the previous evening had been a dream. But then she saw the plastic bag with her ruined uniform sitting by the door, and reality crashed back. She went through her morning routine mechanically. Shower, coffee, the same breakfast of toast and jam she had every day. The normalcy of it should have been comforting, but instead it felt hollow, like she was going through the motions of being herself, rather than actually being herself. The subway was crowded with morning commuters, everyone pressed together in tired silence. Emma stood holding the pole, swaying with the motion of the train, and tried not to think about the stranger. She failed. The Sunset Diner looked exactly the same as always when Emma arrived for her 6 a.m. shift. The early morning light made the chrome fixtures gleam, and Hector, the morning cook, already had coffee brewing and bacon sizzling on the griddle. "Morning, Emma," he called through the kitchen window. "Morning, Hector." She tied on her apron, grabbed her order pad, and prepared for another day of the same routine she'd followed for 5 years. Take orders, serve food, smile at customers, refill coffee, clear tables, repeat. By 7 a.m. the morning rush was in full swing. Emma moved between tables with practiced efficiency, balancing plates and remembering orders without writing them down, making small talk with regulars who came in for the same breakfast at the same time every day. Mr. Chen, who always ordered 2 eggs over easy with wheat toast. Mrs. Rodriguez, who split a short stack of pancakes with her grandson before school. The construction crew from the site down the block, who took over 3 tables and ordered enough food to feed an army. Normal. Everything was blessedly normal. Until 8 o'clock, when Emma looked out the front window and felt her heart stop. The parking lot was filling with vehicles. Not normal vehicles, black SUVs, sleek and expensive, the kind that screamed money and power. 3 of them pulled in, their dark windows reflecting the morning sun, and Emma's first thought was that this couldn't be happening. The diner went quiet. Even the construction workers stopped their loud banter, turning to stare out the windows. The SUVs parked in a neat row. For a long moment, nothing happened. Then, simultaneously, doors opened, and men emerged. Big men, wearing dark suits, their eyes hidden behind sunglasses despite the early hour. They moved with the kind of coordinated precision that suggested military or security training. And in the center of them all, stepping out of the middle vehicle, was him, the stranger from last night. Only now, in the clear light of morning, without blood and rain and pain obscuring him, Emma could see him properly, tall and commanding, with dark hair carefully styled, wearing a suit that probably cost more than she made in a month. He moved with absolute confidence, completely healed from last night's injury, or at least hiding any pain with remarkable control. He walked toward the diner, his men flanking him like a protective wall, and Emma's hands began to shake so badly she had to set down the coffee pot before she dropped it. "Oh, Lord," Mrs. Rodriguez whispered, clutching her grandson closer. "Emma, do you know who that is?" Emma shook her head, unable to speak, unable to move, unable to do anything but watch as the stranger, the man she'd saved, the man she'd told herself she'd never see again, pushed open the diner door. The bell chimed, cheerful and incongruous with the tension that had suddenly filled the room. His eyes found her immediately, and Emma saw something flicker in those gray depths. Recognition, intent, something that made her mouth go dry and her pulse hammer in her ears. He crossed the diner floor with measured steps, his men remaining by the door, and Emma noticed that every other customer had gone perfectly still. Even Hector had stopped cooking, watching through the kitchen window with wide eyes. The stranger stopped directly in front of Emma, close enough that she had to tilt her head back to meet his gaze. Up close in the harsh morning light, she could see the faint lines around his eyes, the shadow of stubble along his jaw, the small scar above his left eyebrow. "Emma Collins," he said, and his voice was exactly as she remembered, deep, controlled, commanding. "How do you know my—" she started, then remembered. Her name tag. She'd been wearing her name tag last night. "My name," he continued, as if she hadn't spoken, "is Alexander Romano. Most people call me Alex. Last night you saved my life when no one else would have dared touch me. For that you have my gratitude and my protection. I don't need—" Emma began, but he held up a hand, silencing her. "Whether you think you need it or not is irrelevant. You've involved yourself in my world now, Emma. And in my world, debts are serious matters. I owe you my life, and I intend to repay that debt by ensuring your safety." Emma's mind was racing, trying to process his words, the implications, the fact that this was actually happening. "I helped you. It's done. You don't owe me anything. Just leave. Please." Something that might have been respect flickered across his face. "I'm afraid it's not that simple. By helping me, you've marked yourself. My enemies—" He paused, choosing his words carefully. "Certain people who would like to see me harmed will learn what you did, and they'll come for you, to use you against me." "Then don't tell anyone," Emma said desperately. "We can both just forget this happened." Alex's expression softened slightly, and for a moment, she saw a glimpse of the vulnerable man from last night beneath the powerful facade. "It's too late for that. The people I deal with have eyes everywhere. If they don't already know about you, they will soon." He paused. "I'm here to make sure that when they come, you're protected." "Protected how?" "You'll come with me. To my home where my security can watch over you properly." Emma felt the blood drain from her face. "You want me to— what? Just leave my life behind? My job, my apartment, everything?" "Temporarily," Alex said, "until the situation is resolved. And if I refuse," his jaw tightened, "then you'll be in danger. Serious danger. And I'll have your death on my conscience along with all the others." The weight of his words settled over Emma like a physical thing. She looked around the diner, at the frightened faces of the regulars, at Dolores who had appeared in the kitchen window with an expression that clearly said, "I told you so," at the armed men standing by the door like sentinels. This couldn't be her life. This kind of thing didn't happen to people like her. Quiet people who just wanted to live peacefully and send money to their mothers, and maybe someday save enough to go back to school. But it was happening. It had happened the moment she made the choice to help a bleeding stranger instead of calling the police. "I need to think," Emma said, hating how her voice shook. I understand this is overwhelming," Alex said, and his voice had gone gentler, more human. "But I need an answer, Emma. For your own safety, I need you to trust me. Trust him. Trust a man she'd known for less than 24 hours. A man who was clearly involved in criminal activity. A man whose very presence had turned her diner into something from a crime movie." But when Emma looked into his eyes, she didn't see a monster. She saw someone who genuinely believed she was in danger. Someone who felt responsible for that danger. Someone who, despite his obvious power and the fear he inspired in others, was asking rather than demanding. "Can I at least go home and pack some things?" she asked quietly. Relief crossed his features, quickly masked. "Of course. My men will escort you to ensure your safety. And my job? Dolores can't run this place alone. I'll make sure the diner is compensated for your absence. And protected, in case anyone thinks to use it to get to you." Emma untied her apron with trembling fingers. This was insane. This was absolutely insane. But what choice did she really have? If what Alex said was true, and the fear in the faces of everyone watching suggested it was, then staying would put not just herself, but everyone around her in danger. "Okay," she whispered. "Okay, I'll go with you." Alex nodded once, a gesture that somehow conveyed both satisfaction and relief. "Thank you, Emma. I give you my word that you'll be safe." As Emma walked toward the door, flanked by men in expensive suits, she caught Dolores's eye. The older woman's expression was a mixture of concern and something that looked almost like pride. "You call me if you need anything," Dolores said firmly. "Anything at all, you hear me?" "I will," Emma promised, though she had no idea if she'd actually be allowed to make phone calls wherever she was going. The morning air was cool against her face as she stepped outside. One of the SUVs had been brought around, its door held open by a man who looked like he could bench press a small car. Alex appeared at her elbow. "I know this isn't what you wanted, but I promise you, Emma Collins, I will keep you safe. That's not just a debt. It's a vow." Emma looked at him, this powerful stranger who had stumbled bleeding into her life and somehow changed everything in the space of one night and one morning. "I'm going to hold you to that," she said quietly. Then she climbed into the SUV, and as it pulled out of the parking lot, she watched the Sunset Diner, her safe haven, her predictable routine, her quiet life, disappear in the rearview mirror. Emma Collins had always chosen safety over risk, predictability over adventure. But as the SUV merged into New York traffic with Alexander Romano seated beside her and armed guards surrounding them both, she realized that some choices, once made, could never be unmade. She had saved a stranger's life. Now she would have to live with the consequences. The SUV glided through the streets of Queens with unsettling smoothness, its tinted windows transforming the familiar neighborhoods into something foreign and distant. Emma sat rigid in the leather seat, her hands folded tightly in her lap, acutely aware of Alexander Romano beside her. He hadn't spoken since they left the diner, his attention focused on his phone as his thumbs moved across the screen with practiced efficiency. The two other vehicles followed close behind, a convoy that drew stares from pedestrians and made other cars give them a wide berth. Emma had lived in New York long enough to recognize the choreography of power, but she'd never been part of it before. She'd always been on the outside, watching from the sidewalk as important people passed by in their expensive cars, living lives that had nothing to do with hers. Until now. "Your address?" Alex asked without looking up from his phone. Emma rattled off the street number in Astoria, her voice sounding small in the SUV's spacious interior. The driver, a broad-shouldered man with salt and pepper hair, who'd been introduced simply as Marcus, nodded and adjusted their route. "How long will I need to be away?" Emma asked, breaking the silence. "I need to call my mother's facility. Let them know about next month's payment." "That's been handled," Alex interrupted, finally setting down his phone. "The payment for the next 6 months has been arranged. Your mother will continue to receive the same level of care." Emma's head snapped toward him. What? How did you? I make it my business to know about the people in my life, he said simply. Even those who've just entered it. The nursing home in Canton, Ohio. Shady Grove Care Facility. Your mother, Margaret Collins, has been a resident there for 3 years. You send them $2,000 every month, which represents approximately 60% of your income from the diner. The invasion of her privacy should have made Emma angry, but instead she felt a strange mix of violation and relief. 6 months of payments. 6 months of not worrying about whether the check would clear, whether she'd scraped together enough from tips and her meager salary. You had no right to look into my life, she said quietly. No, Alex agreed. I didn't, but I also couldn't leave you vulnerable while you're under my protection. Knowledge is protection, Emma. The more I know about you, the better I can keep you safe. Safe from what, exactly? You still haven't told me who these enemies are or why they'd care about a waitress from Queens. Alex was quiet for a moment, his gray eyes studying her face with an intensity that made her want to look away. What do you know about me? About what I do? Nothing, Emma admitted. I meant what I said last night. I didn't want to know. But you've guessed. It wasn't a question. Emma looked out the window at the passing buildings, the morning crowds heading to work, the food carts setting up on corners. Normal life, continuing as if nothing had changed. You're involved in organized crime, she said finally. The way people in the diner reacted to you, the security, the money, the fact that you got stabbed and refused medical help, it's not hard to figure out. I prefer to think of it as running a business empire that operates outside conventional legal frameworks, Alex said, and there was a hint of dark humor in his voice. But yes, essentially you're correct. I control a significant portion of the East Coast's underground economy. Shipping, imports, certain financial operations. I have associates in various industries, both legitimate and otherwise. You're a crime boss, Emma said flatly. That's one way to phrase it. He shifted in his seat to face her more directly. I inherited this position from my father when I was 23. I've spent the last 15 years building it into something more structured, more controlled. I don't deal in certain things. No human trafficking. No substances that destroy communities. No preying on the vulnerable. But I won't pretend I'm a good man, Emma. I've done things that would horrify you. Then why tell me this? Why not just keep me ignorant and compliant? Because you deserve to know what you've gotten involved in. And because, he paused, seeming to choose his words carefully, I find that I don't want to lie to you. The SUV pulled up outside Emma's apartment building, a 5-story walk-up that had seen better days. The contrast between the sleek vehicle and the cracked sidewalk, the rusted fire escape, the faded awning, was almost comical. I'll need 10 minutes, Emma said, reaching for the door handle. Marcus and Tony will accompany you, Alex said. I'll wait here. I don't need escorts to pack a bag in my own apartment. Emma. Alex's hand covered hers on the door handle, warm and surprisingly gentle. Please, humor me. My enemies move quickly, and if they've learned about you, they may already be watching. The thought sent ice down Emma's spine. She nodded reluctantly, and Marcus appeared at her door, opening it and scanning the street with professional efficiency, before allowing her to exit. The climb to the 3rd floor felt surreal, with 2 large men in expensive suits trailing behind her. Mrs. Kowalski from 2B poked her head out to see what the commotion was about, her eyes going wide at the sight of Emma's escort. Emma could already imagine the gossip that would spread through the building. Her apartment looked exactly as she'd left it. Small, tidy, achingly familiar. Emma moved through it quickly, pulling a duffel bag from her closet and filling it with clothes, toiletries, her laptop, the photo album with pictures of her mother from before the disease took hold. She grabbed her phone charger, her one good pair of shoes, a worn paperback she'd been reading. What did you pack when you didn't know how long you'd be gone? When you didn't know if you'd ever come back? Emma paused in front of the small shelf that held her most precious possessions, her mother's wedding ring, which she'd saved from being sold when they'd needed money, the acceptance letter from NYU that she'd framed, even though she'd only completed 2 years before dropping out, a snow globe from the one real vacation she'd taken as a child, before everything fell apart. She left them all. Taking them would make this feel permanent, like she was saying goodbye to this life, and Emma wasn't ready for that. Miss Collins, Marcus said from the doorway, his voice professionally neutral but carrying an edge of urgency. We should go. Emma zipped the duffel bag, took one last look around her tiny sanctuary, and followed the men back downstairs. Alex was standing beside the SUV when they emerged, his phone pressed to his ear. He was speaking in rapid Italian, His tone clipped and authoritative. When he saw Emma, he ended the call abruptly. "Everything you need?" he asked. "As much as I could grab in 10 minutes. The drive into Manhattan was quieter. Alex returned to his phone, firing off text messages and making calls in a mixture of English, Italian, and what sounded like Russian. Emma listened without meaning to, picking up fragments that painted a picture of a vast network of operations, of problems being solved, and orders being given with absolute expectation of obedience. This was who he really was, she realized. Not the wounded man who'd stumbled into her diner, not even the protective figure who'd promised to keep her safe. This was Alexander Romano in his element, commanding, ruthless, powerful, and she was completely out of her depth. The SUV eventually turned onto a tree-lined street in the Upper East Side, where elegant pre-war buildings stood like sentinels guarding their wealthy inhabitants. They pulled up to a building that managed to be both understated and obviously expensive, with a discreet awning and a doorman who snapped to attention as their convoy arrived. "Welcome home, Mr. Romano," the doorman said, not even blinking at the multiple vehicles or the armed men. "Thank you, James. This is Miss Collins. She'll be staying with me. Please add her to the approved list and ensure she has access to all amenities." "Of course, sir." The lobby was all marble and brass, with art that Emma suspected was genuine despite her limited knowledge. An elevator that required a key card took them to the top floor, the penthouse naturally. When the doors opened, Emma stepped into a space that defied her every expectation. She'd imagined something cold and masculine, all dark furniture and minimal decoration. Instead, the penthouse was surprisingly warm, with high ceilings, enormous windows overlooking Central Park, hardwood floors covered with what looked like antique rugs. The furniture was elegant but comfortable, the color palette muted earth tones accented with deep blues and greens. Art hung on the walls. Real art, the kind she'd only seen in museums. "The guest room is this way," Alex said, leading her down a hallway. He opened a door to reveal a bedroom that was larger than her entire studio apartment. A king-sized bed dominated the space, dressed in white linens that probably had a thread count higher than her rent. French doors led to a small balcony with a view of the park. I can't," Emma trailed off, overwhelmed. "The bathroom is through there," Alex continued, pointing to another door. "You'll find everything you need, but if something's missing, just let Rosa know. She manages the household." "Alex, this is too much. I don't need—" "You're under my protection, Emma. That means you're afforded the same security and comfort as anyone in my inner circle." He set her duffel bag on a bench at the foot of the bed. "This isn't charity, it's necessity." An older woman appeared in the doorway, her silver hair pulled back in a neat bun, her face kind but assessing. "Mr. Romano. Rosa, this is Emma Collins. She'll be staying with us indefinitely. Please make sure she has everything she needs." Rosa's sharp eyes swept over Emma, taking in her discount store jeans, her worn sneakers, the way she clutched her duffel bag like a lifeline. But her smile was genuine when she spoke. "Welcome, Miss Collins. I'll prepare lunch for 1 o'clock. Do you have any dietary restrictions I should know about?" No restrictions. But please, you don't have to go to any trouble." "It's no trouble at all, dear." Rosa's expression softened. "I imagine this is all quite overwhelming. Why don't you settle in, freshen up, and I'll bring you some tea." After Rosa left, Alex lingered in the doorway. "I have calls to make, arrangements to finalize. You're free to explore the penthouse, use any of the facilities. There's a library, a gym, an office if you need to work on your laptop. The kitchen is always available." "Am I a prisoner?" Emma asked quietly. "No, but I would ask that you don't leave the building without informing me first, and preferably not alone." He paused. "This isn't about control, Emma. It's about keeping you alive." After he left, Emma sank onto the edge of the bed, her legs suddenly unable to support her. The mattress was incredibly soft, the kind of luxury she'd never experienced. Everything in this room probably cost more than she'd make in a year. She pulled out her phone and called Dolores, needing to hear a familiar voice. "Emma? Thank God. Are you all right?" "I'm fine. I'm at his penthouse in the Upper East Side. It's like something from a magazine. Dolores, what have I gotten myself into?" "Something way over your head, honey. But you did the right thing, helping that man. And now he's doing the right thing, keeping you safe. You know who he is, don't you?" Dolores sighed. "I've lived in Queens for 40 years, Emma. I know the names, even if I don't know the faces. Alexander Romano. They say he's the most powerful man in New York that nobody knows about. They say he controls everything from the docks to Wall Street. They say he's dangerous but fair, brutal but honorable. They say a lot of things. They also say he protects what's his. And right now, you're his. That's not the worst place to be. After hanging up with Dolores, Emma unpacked her meager belongings into the enormous dresser, her clothes looking lost in the spacious drawers. She showered in the bathroom, which featured a rainfall showerhead and enough marble to build a small monument, then changed into clean jeans and a simple sweater. Rosa brought tea as promised, along with small sandwiches and fruit that Emma ate mechanically, tasting nothing. The afternoon stretched ahead with no structure, no demands on her time. For someone who'd worked since she was 15, who'd never had a day off she couldn't account for, the emptiness was disorienting. Emma explored the penthouse, her footsteps quiet on the expensive rugs. The library contained floor-to-ceiling shelves filled with books in multiple languages, classics, modern fiction, history, philosophy. She pulled down a worn copy of East of Eden and was surprised to find notes in the margins, thoughtful observations in neat handwriting that had to be Alex's. The living room featured those enormous windows with their park views, comfortable couches arranged around a fireplace that looked functional despite the building's modern amenities. Photos in simple frames dotted the mantel, an older couple that might be Alex's parents, a younger version of Alex with his arm around a beautiful dark-haired woman, various group shots that had the feel of family gatherings. Emma found herself studying the photo of young Alex and the woman, noting the genuine smile on his face, the relaxed set of his shoulders. He looked happy in a way she hadn't seen in the man she knew. "My sister, Gabriella." Emma spun around to find Alex standing in the doorway, having approached in complete silence. He'd removed his suit jacket and rolled up his shirt sleeves, making him look slightly less intimidating. "She's beautiful," Emma said. She was. Alex moved to stand beside her, taking the photo from the mantel. "She died 7 years ago. Car accident. At least that's what the official report said." The past tense and the implication in his words made Emma's chest tighten. "I'm sorry. She was the good one in our family. Wanted to be a teacher to help kids in struggling neighborhoods. She hated what our father did, what I do, but she loved me anyway." He set the photo down carefully. "She would have liked you. You don't know me. I know you risked yourself to help a stranger. I know you worked 2 jobs to care for a mother who doesn't remember you. I know you had dreams once. NYU, wasn't it? Literature degree?" At Emma's startled look, he gave a slight smile. "I told you. I make it my business to know." "That's incredibly invasive." "Yes," he agreed simply, "but I won't apologize for it. Information is currency in my world, Emma, and understanding you helps me protect you." "From what?" "You still haven't explained who these mysterious enemies are." Alex gestured to the couch. "Sit. I'll tell you what you need to know." Once they were settled, Emma on one end of the couch, Alex on the other, a careful distance between them, he began to speak. "The man who stabbed me last night was named Viktor Kozlov. He works for the Volkov Bratva, a Russian organization that's been trying to expand into my territory for the past 2 years. We've had an uneasy truce, but Viktor decided to make a move, to try to take me out and create chaos in my organization. He failed, obviously, but now the Volkovs have a problem. They made a move against me and failed. That makes them look weak, which in our world is the same as being dead. They'll need to save face to prove they're still dangerous. And I'm leverage," Emma said, understanding dawning. "You're the woman who saved my life when I was vulnerable. That makes you important to me whether it's true or not. And if they can hurt you, they can hurt me." Alex's jaw tightened. "I won't let that happen. So what do we do? I just hide here forever?" "No, I'm handling the Volkov problem. Within a week, maybe 2, the situation will be resolved, either through negotiation or through more direct means." Emma didn't ask what more direct means entailed. She wasn't sure she wanted to know. "In the meantime," Alex continued, "you stay here where my security can protect you. I know it's not the life you chose, and I'm sorry for that, but it's temporary. And then what? I go back to the diner, back to my apartment, and pretend none of this happened? If that's what you want." Emma studied his face, looking for deception, but found only a careful neutrality. "What do you want?" The question seemed to surprise him. He was quiet for a long moment, his gray eyes searching hers. "I want you safe," he said finally. "Beyond that, I don't know yet." The honesty in his answer was somehow more unsettling than any lie would have been. That evening, Rosa prepared dinner, pasta with a sauce that tasted like something from Emma's childhood. Before everything got complicated, they ate in the formal dining room, sitting at opposite ends of a table that could seat 12. the distance between them feeling both appropriate and absurd. "Tell me about the diner," Alex said, breaking the silence. "How did you end up working there?" Emma twirled her fork in her pasta. "It was supposed to be temporary. I dropped out of NYU to take care of my mom when she got sick, needed money fast. Dolores hired me on the spot, said I had an honest face. I told myself I'd just work there until I saved enough to go back to school. But you never did. Mom got worse faster than expected. The facility in Ohio was the best I could find, but it's expensive. Every time I'd save a little money, there'd be some new expense, some new crisis. The years just slipped away. Do you regret it? Leaving school?" Emma considered the question. "Sometimes. I loved studying literature, loved analyzing stories and understanding why they affected people. But I don't regret being there for my mom, even if she doesn't know who I am anymore. She sacrificed everything for me when I was young. It's my turn now. That's remarkably selfless. Or remarkably stupid, depending on how you look at it." Emma met his eyes across the expansive table. "What about you? You said you inherited this life at 23. What would you have done if you'd had a choice?" Alex seemed surprised by the question, as if no one had ever asked him before. "Architecture, maybe. I've always been fascinated by buildings, by the way spaces can be designed to make people feel certain things. There's an art to it, a logic. You could still do that, study it, I mean. I'm 38 years old, Emma, and I run an empire that employs thousands of people directly or indirectly. Walking away isn't an option. Why not? Because in this life, there's no retirement plan. You lead or you die, or someone you love dies to prove a point." His voice had gone hard. "I learned that lesson with Gabriella. I won't forget it." After dinner, Emma retreated to her room, overwhelmed by the day's events and the strange intimacy of their conversation. She tried to read, but the words blurred together. She tried to watch something on her laptop, but couldn't focus. Finally, she stepped out onto the small balcony, letting the cool night air wash over her. The park stretched below, illuminated by streetlights and the glow of surrounding buildings. The city hummed with its constant energy, millions of lives intersecting and diverging in patterns too complex to comprehend. "Can't sleep?" Emma turned to find Alex standing in the doorway to her room. He'd changed into dark jeans and a simple black sweater, looking more human and less like the untouchable crime boss. "It's been a strange day," Emma said. "That's an understatement." He stepped onto the balcony but maintained a respectful distance. "I wanted to apologize." "For what?" "For upending your life, for dragging you into my world without your consent, for investigating your privacy." He paused. "For finding you in the first place, stumbling into that diner. You were bleeding to death. Where else were you supposed to go? I had safe houses, doctors who owe me favors. I could have gone anywhere. But I saw the lights of the sunset and something made me walk through that door." His gray eyes caught the light from inside, making them seem almost luminous. "I think some part of me knew you'd help, that you were exactly the kind of person who couldn't turn away from suffering. Is that supposed to make me feel better about this situation? No. It's supposed to explain why I feel responsible, why I'll do whatever it takes to keep you safe, even if you hate me for it." Emma turned back to the view, gripping the balcony railing. "I don't hate you. I'm confused, scared, completely out of my depth, but I don't hate you. You should. It would be safer for you if you did. Probably. But I've never been very good at doing the safe thing when someone needs help." She glanced at him. "How's your side? The stitches holding?" A smile ghosted across his features. "You did excellent work. No infection, healing cleanly. You have a steady hand. Years of mending clothes and stuffed animals. Human skin isn't that different, apparently." They stood in comfortable silence for a while, looking out over the city. Emma found herself acutely aware of Alex's presence, the way he held himself with that constant alertness, ready for danger even in this moment of peace. The way his hands rested on the railing, strong and scarred. The way he smelled of expensive cologne and something underneath that was uniquely him. "Emma," he said quietly, "I meant what I said earlier. When this is over, when the Volkov situation is resolved, you can walk away, back to your life, your apartment, your job. I'll make sure you're compensated for your time and trouble, and you'll never hear from me again if that's what you want. And if it's not what I want?" The question hung between them, heavy with implications neither of them was ready to examine. "Then we'll figure that out," Alex said finally. "Together." Emma nodded, not trusting herself to speak. The intensity of whatever was building between them frightened her more than the threat of Russian mobsters, or the luxury of his penthouse, or the complete upheaval of her carefully constructed life. because she recognized it for what it was, the beginning of something that could either save her or destroy her, and she had no idea which. "Good night, Emma," Alex said softly, moving toward the door. "Good night." She stayed on the balcony long after he'd gone, watching the city lights and wondering how a single act of compassion could change everything so completely. Below her, in the street, a black car idled for a moment before pulling away into traffic. Emma didn't notice it, didn't see the telephoto lens pointed at Alex's penthouse, didn't know that her photo was already being sent to people who would use it to destroy everything Alex had built. The Volkovs had found their leverage, and the real danger was only beginning. Emma woke to sunlight streaming through the French doors, disoriented by the unfamiliar softness of the mattress and the quality of light that was all wrong for her Astoria apartment. For a moment, she couldn't remember where she was. Then it all came rushing back. The penthouse, Alexander Romano, the fact that her life had been completely upended in less than 48 hours. She reached for her phone on the nightstand. 7:30 a.m. At the diner, she'd already be an hour into her shift, serving coffee to the morning regulars and taking orders for eggs and pancakes. The normalcy of that routine seemed impossibly distant now. A soft knock on the door preceded Rosa's entrance with a tray. "Good morning, Miss Collins. I thought you might like breakfast in your room while you adjust." The tray held fresh pastries, fruit, yogurt, and coffee that smelled infinitely better than anything from the diner's industrial machine. Emma's stomach growled despite her anxiety. "Thank you, Rosa. You really don't have to go to all this trouble." "It's no trouble at all, dear." Rosa set the tray on a small table by the window. "Mr. Romano has already left for a morning meeting, but he asked me to tell you that you're welcome to use the gym, the library, or anything else in the penthouse. He'll be back around 2 o'clock. After Rosa left, Emma ate slowly, watching the morning joggers in Central Park below. People living their normal lives, worried about normal things. Work deadlines, grocery shopping, whether it might rain. She envied them fiercely. The penthouse felt different in daylight, less intimidating but somehow more real. Emma explored more thoroughly than she had yesterday, discovering details she'd missed. The kitchen was a chef's dream with professional-grade appliances that had clearly seen regular use. Apparently Alex cooked, which seemed oddly domestic for a crime boss. The gym contained enough equipment for a small fitness center. The office featured a massive desk with multiple monitors, all currently dark. In the library, Emma ran her fingers along the spines of books, noting the eclectic mix. Russian literature sat beside Italian poetry. Philosophy texts neighbored crime novels. It was the collection of someone who read widely and deeply, someone with an intellect that needed constant feeding. She pulled down The Count of Monte Cristo and settled into a leather armchair by the window. If she was going to be trapped here, she might as well revisit old favorites. Emma was several chapters in when her phone buzzed. A text from an unknown number. "This is Alex. I should have given you my contact information yesterday. How are you settling in?" Emma stared at the message, unsure how to respond. "Fine. Thank you. Your library is impressive. My father's collection, mostly. I've added to it over the years. You're welcome to read anything you'd like. Currently revisiting Dumas. Excellent choice. A man wrongly imprisoned who rebuilds himself into something powerful enough to face his enemies. There's a certain poetry to it." Emma smiled despite herself. "Is that how you see yourself? As Edmond Dantes?" "Sometimes. Other times, I'm Fernand Mondego, the villain who doesn't realize he's the villain until it's too late." The honesty in that response caught Emma off guard. Before she could formulate a reply, another message came through. "I have a favor to ask. I'm meeting with some associates this afternoon at a restaurant in Midtown. I'd like you to accompany me." Emma's stomach tightened. "Why?" "Because the Volkovs need to see that you're under my protection, and because keeping you hidden makes you seem like a weakness. Bringing you into my world openly shows strength. You want to use me as a prop. I want to keep you alive. Sometimes that requires theater." Emma set down her phone, her hands trembling slightly. This was it. The moment when she'd see exactly what kind of world she'd stumbled into. The reality beyond the luxury penthouse and the thoughtful book collection and the man who quoted Dumas. "What time?" she texted back. "We leave at 3. Rosa will help you prepare." "Thank you, Emma." At 2:30, Rosa knocked on Emma's door with an armful of clothing. "Mr. Romano thought you might need something appropriate for this afternoon." The dress was simple but elegant. Deep navy, fitted but not tight, with 3/4 sleeves and a hem that fell just below the knee. The fabric felt expensive, substantial. Shoes followed. low heels that Emma could actually walk in, unlike the impractical stilettos she'd half expected. "How did he know my size?" Emma asked, though she suspected she already knew the answer. Rosa's smile was knowing. "Mr. Romano is very thorough about details. There's also jewelry if you'd like, but I'd suggest keeping it simple." 20 minutes later, Emma barely recognized herself in the mirror. The dress fit perfectly, making her look sophisticated in a way her usual thrift store finds never did. Rosa had helped with her hair, pulling it back in a simple twist that was elegant without being fussy. Minimal makeup emphasized her features rather than hiding them. "You look lovely, dear," Rosa said warmly. "But remember, you're not just decoration. Mr. Romano chose to bring you for a reason. Hold your head high." Alex was waiting in the living room when Emma emerged, and the look on his face when he saw her made her breath catch. He'd changed into a charcoal suit that looked custom-made, the fit absolutely perfect across his broad shoulders. His dark hair was styled with casual precision, and he'd shaved, revealing the strong line of his jaw. "You look beautiful," he said simply. "Rosa's doing mostly. Rosa didn't change who you are. She just helped you feel comfortable showing it." He offered his arm. "Ready?" "Not remotely, but I'll do it anyway." The restaurant was in Midtown, an Italian place called Russo's that looked unassuming from the outside but was clearly exclusive. No sign advertised its presence, just a brass number on a black door. When Alex and Emma entered, a host immediately appeared, greeting Alex by name and ushering them to a private room in the back. The room contained a single large table where 3 men were already seated. They stood when Alex entered, their expressions ranging from curious to carefully neutral. "Gentlemen," Alex said, his voice carrying an authority that Emma hadn't heard before. This was Alexander Romano in full command mode. "This is Emma Collins. Emma, allow me to introduce my associates. Vincent Marconi handles our shipping operations. Dmitry Sokolov manages our Eastern European connections. And James Chen oversees our financial interests." Emma nodded to each man, maintaining Rosa's advice to hold her head high despite feeling completely out of her depth. Vincent was older, probably in his 60s, with iron gray hair and sharp eyes that assessed Emma with open interest. Dmitry was younger, maybe early 40s, with the kind of controlled stillness that suggested dangerous competence. James looked to be around Alex's age, wearing glasses and an expensive suit that screamed Wall Street. "Miss Collins," Vincent said, his voice carrying a thick New York accent. "We've heard about your assistance to our friend here. That took courage. Or stupidity," Emma replied before she could stop herself. "I'm still deciding which." Vincent laughed, a genuine sound that seemed to break some of the tension. "I like her, Alex. She's got spine." They sat, and waiters appeared with wine and appetizers that Emma suspected hadn't been ordered. Clearly, this was a regular arrangement. Alex positioned himself at the head of the table with Emma to his right, a placement that seemed both protective and declarative. The conversation started with business, shipping schedules, port authority problems, some issue with customs that James was handling through alternative channels. Emma stayed quiet, observing the dynamics. Vincent clearly had history with Alex, treating him with respect, but also a familiarity that suggested long association. Dmitry was harder to read, his expression carefully neutral throughout. James seemed to be the numbers man, speaking in terms of percentages and profit margins. "The Volkov situation," Dmitry said eventually, his accent marking him as Russian despite decades in America. "It's escalating. Victor's failure has made Sergei look weak. He'll need to make a move soon." "Let him," Alex said calmly. "We're prepared." With respect, bringing Miss Collins into this environment might be seen as provocation. Dmitry's eyes flicked to Emma. "No offense intended." "None taken," Emma said, "though I'd love to know why everyone keeps talking about me like I'm not sitting right here." Dmitry's eyebrows rose slightly, and Vincent laughed again. "She's got a point, Dmitry." "Emma is under my protection," Alex said, his tone leaving no room for argument. "Anyone who wants to reach her goes through me. That's not provocation, that's clarity. I want the Volkovs to understand exactly what they're facing if they continue this path." "And if they take that as a challenge?" James asked. "Then we respond accordingly." The food arrived. Courses of pasta, veal, fish prepared with techniques that made the diner's offerings seem like cafeteria food by comparison. Emma ate mechanically, hyper-aware of every word being spoken, every glance exchanged between these men who controlled more money and power than she could comprehend. Miss Collins, Vincent said during a lull in conversation. Alex mentioned you worked at a diner in Queens. What made you help him that night? Emma set down her fork, aware that all eyes were on her. He needed help. I could provide it. It wasn't complicated. Most people would have called the authorities. Most people aren't waitresses in Queens who've learned that sometimes the authorities don't help as much as they should. Emma met Vincent's gaze steadily. I've seen people suffer because no one would help them. I didn't want to be that person. Even knowing the risk, I didn't know the risk until it was too late. And by then, Emma glanced at Alex. I'd already made my choice. A choice that saved my life, Alex said quietly. Which is why she's here. Why she's protected. Why anyone who threatens her answers to me directly. The message was clear, and Emma saw it register on the faces of the three men. This wasn't just about keeping her safe. It was about Alex making a statement about loyalty, about what he valued, about the lines he wouldn't allow to be crossed. The rest of the meal passed with lighter conversation. Vincent told stories about the old days, when Alex's father ran things differently. James discussed legitimate investments the organization was making. Dimitri remained mostly quiet, watching everything with those careful eyes. As they were preparing to leave, Vincent pulled Alex aside for a private word. Emma waited by the door, pretending not to notice the way Dimitri studied her. You care for him, Dimitri said quietly. It wasn't a question. I barely know him. That's not what I asked. Emma turned to face the Russian directly. What do you want me to say? That I'm falling for the dangerous crime boss who kidnapped me for my own protection? That this whole situation isn't completely insane? I want you to understand what you're walking into, Dimitri said, his voice low. Alex is a good man in a bad business. He has honor, principle, rare things in our world, but he's also marked for death by people who won't hesitate to use you against him. Being close to him is the most dangerous place you could possibly be. Then why are you telling me this instead of him? Because he won't. He'll protect you with everything he has, but he won't be honest about the cost. Dimitri's expression softened slightly. I've known Alex for 15 years. I've seen him lose people he cares about. I've seen what it does to him. If you stay in his life, you need to understand that danger is permanent. There's no resolution, no endpoint where everything becomes safe. Before Emma could respond, Alex returned with Vincent. Whatever they'd discussed had left Alex looking tense, his jaw tight. We should go, he said, placing a hand on Emma's lower back. Thank you, gentlemen. The SUV ride back to the penthouse was quiet. Alex stared out the window, his expression distant, and Emma didn't know how to bridge the sudden silence between them. What did Vincent tell you? She asked finally. The Volkovs know about you. They have photos from last night, surveillance from this afternoon. They're planning something. Alex's hands clenched into fists. I should have been more careful. Should have kept you hidden longer. You said hiding me would make me look like a weakness. I was wrong. I put my ego ahead of your safety. Emma reached across the seat, placing her hand over his fist. Hey, I chose to come today. I chose to help you that first night. These are my decisions too. Alex's gray eyes met hers, and Emma saw genuine fear there, not for himself, but for her. You don't understand what these people are capable of. Then show me. Stop protecting me from the truth and show me what I'm actually facing. After a long moment, Alex nodded. All right, but not tonight. Tonight, you need rest. Tomorrow I'll show you exactly what my world looks like. That night, Emma couldn't sleep. She lay in the expensive bed, staring at the ceiling, replaying the afternoon in her mind. The careful dance of power at that table. The way Alex commanded respect without raising his voice. Dimitri's warning about permanent danger. Around midnight, she gave up on sleep and padded to the library in her pajamas. She was curled up in the armchair with the Count of Monte Cristo when Alex appeared in the doorway. Couldn't sleep either, he asked. Too much thinking. He settled into the chair opposite hers, and Emma noticed he'd changed into sweatpants and a t-shirt, the most casual she'd seen him. It made him look younger, less intimidating. What Dimitri said to you, Alex began. He was right. I haven't been fully honest about what being in my life means. So be honest now. Alex was quiet for a moment, choosing his words. My father built this organization through fear and violence. When I took over, I tried to change that, to make us more structured, more legitimate where possible. But you can't wash blood off with good intentions. I've ordered people hurt. I've made decisions that ended lives. I've done things that would make you see me as a monster if you knew the details. Why are you telling me this? Because you deserve to know who you're trusting your safety to. His gray eyes were intense in the dim light. I'm not a good man, Emma. I'm just a man who's trying to do better than his father while still maintaining power in a world that respects only strength. Emma closed her book, setting it aside. You know what I think? I think you're so used to being judged by your worst moments that you can't see your best ones. You took in a stranger who helped you. You're paying for my mother's care without being asked. You read Dumas and cook your own meals and collect books because knowledge matters to you. Those things don't erase the rest. No, but they show me who you're trying to be, not just who you've been forced to become. Emma leaned forward. I'm not naive, Alex. I know you're involved in illegal things. I know people have been hurt because of decisions you've made. But I also know you're trying to protect me at considerable risk to yourself. That counts for something. You're too forgiving. Maybe. Or maybe I just understand that people are complicated, that someone can be both dangerous and kind, both powerful and vulnerable. She paused. My father was an alcoholic who could be cruel when he drank, but I also remember him teaching me to ride a bike, staying up all night when I was sick, crying when he realized he'd hurt us again. People aren't just one thing. Alex studied her face for a long moment. How did someone like you end up alone in New York, working at a diner? Same way someone like you ended up running a crime empire. Life made choices for us, and we did the best we could with what we had. They talked until nearly 2 a.m., the conversation ranging from childhood memories to favorite books to the small moments that had shaped them. Emma learned that Alex had wanted to be an architect, that his mother had died when he was 16, that his sister Gabriella had been the only person who truly understood him. Alex learned that Emma had been accepted to 3 universities, that she played piano though she hadn't touched one in years, that her mother used to braid her hair every morning before school, and that Emma missed that simple intimacy more than anything. When Emma finally returned to her room, she felt like she'd glimpsed something real beneath Alex's carefully constructed exterior, and that glimpse was more dangerous to her carefully guarded heart than any Russian mobster could ever be. The next morning, true to his word, Alex took Emma deeper into his world. They started at the docks in Brooklyn, where shipping containers were being loaded and unloaded in a precisely choreographed dance. Alex walked through the operation with Emma at his side, workers nodding respectfully as they passed. This is legitimate business, Alex explained. We import goods from all over the world. Most of it is completely legal. Textiles, electronics, food products. But some containers carry other things, items that bypass normal customs channels. Contraband. That's one word for it. Alex stopped at an office overlooking the loading area. I don't deal in weapons or anything that could be used to hurt innocents. Mostly luxury goods that wealthy people want without paying import taxes. Designer items, expensive wines. Art that's technically legal, but being moved through unofficial channels. Emma watched the operation below. How much of this is yours? About 40% of everything moving through this port. The other 60% belongs to various other organizations and legitimate companies. He gestured to a man in a hard hat who was directing workers. That's Marco. He's been managing this operation for 12 years. His son just started college on a scholarship we funded. His daughter's wedding next month. I'm invited. You're part of their lives. I employ 300 people directly at this location. They have families, mortgages, dreams. When I make decisions about the business, I'm making decisions about their lives too. Alex's expression was serious. That's the weight I carry, Emma. Every choice affects hundreds of people who depend on me. Their next stop was a community center in the Bronx. Emma was surprised when Alex led her inside, where children were participating in an after-school program, homework help, art classes, sports activities. A woman in her 50s approached, her face lighting up when she saw Alex. Mr. Romano, we weren't expecting you today. Just showing a friend around, Maria. How are the numbers looking? Better than ever. We've got 80 kids enrolled now, and the tutoring program is making a real difference. Sarah Martinez just got accepted to Hunter College, first in her family to go to college. Alex's smile was genuine. That's excellent news. Make sure she knows about our scholarship program. After Maria left to wrangle some energetic 10-year-olds, Emma turned to Alex. You fund this place? This and 6 others like it across the city. Anonymous donations, officially. These neighborhoods, they're forgotten by people who could help. Kids grow up without opportunities, without hope. Some of them end up working for people like me because they don't see other options. His voice was quiet. I can't change the whole system, but I can give some kids a chance at something better. The Robin Hood defense? Emma asked gently. Steal from the rich to help the poor? I don't pretend to be a hero, Emma. This doesn't absolve anything else I do, but it matters to me that something good comes from the money we make, even if that money isn't earned through entirely legal means. Their final stop was a restaurant in Little Italy, family-owned for 3 generations. The elderly owner, Giuseppe, embraced Alex like a son, insisting they stay for lunch. Over pasta and wine, Giuseppe told stories about Alex's father, about the neighborhood's history, about how things had changed over the decades. It was clear that Alex was more than just a customer here. He was family. My grandson, Giuseppe said at one point, he wants to expand, open a second location. But the banks, they won't give him a loan. They say the neighborhood is too risky. He looked at Alex meaningfully. Have Antonio send me his business plan, Alex said. We'll make it happen. After they left, Emma questioned him. You're going to fund his grandson's expansion? Giuseppe's father helped my grandfather when he first came to America. That kind of loyalty runs deep, and Antonio is smart, hardworking. The restaurant will succeed. Alex shrugged. Not everything is about profit. Back at the penthouse that evening, Emma's head was spinning with everything she'd seen. The docks, the community center, the restaurant, they painted a picture far more complex than Crime Boss could capture. I wanted you to understand, Alex said as they stood in the living room, that what I do isn't simple. It's not just violence and illegality. It's also community, loyalty, trying to do some good in a system that's rigged against people like the ones we saw today. You're justifying it, Emma said quietly. No, I'm contextualizing it. There's a difference. Alex moved to pour them both wine from the bar. I know what I am, Emma. I've made peace with it, but I wanted you to see the whole picture before you decide whether you can tolerate being in my world. Emma accepted the wine glass, her fingers brushing his. What if I said I can't? What if this is all too much? Then I keep you safe until the Volkov situation is resolved, and then I let you go, with enough money to go back to school to make sure your mother is cared for, to give you the fresh start you deserve. And you? What happens to you? Alex's smile was sad. I keep doing what I've always done, running the empire, making impossible choices, trying to be better than my father while knowing I'll probably fail. Emma set down her wine glass and crossed to where Alex stood. Standing this close, she had to tilt her head back to meet his eyes, and she saw surprise flicker across his features. I think, she said slowly, that you're harder on yourself than anyone else could ever be. And I think you've built a life where you're surrounded by people who depend on you but no one who truly sees you. Emma, let me finish. She placed a hand on his chest, feeling his heart beat beneath her palm. I don't know if I can stay in this world. It scares me. The danger, the violence, the constant threat, it's everything I've spent years trying to avoid, but I know that walking away from you would be one of the hardest things I've ever done. Alex covered her hand with his own, his gray eyes searching her face. You barely know me. I know enough. I know you read philosophy and fund community centers and remember the names of dock workers' children. I know you carry the weight of hundreds of lives on your shoulders and still make time to ensure an old man's grandson can follow his dreams. I know, her voice softened, that when you look at me, I feel seen in a way I haven't felt in years. Emma, her name on his lips was both a warning and a prayer. If you stay, if you choose this, there's no going back. The danger doesn't end. The fear doesn't stop. People will always see you as leverage against me. I know. You deserve better. You deserve safe and normal and boring. You deserve someone who can give you the quiet life you wanted. Maybe I don't want that anymore. Or maybe, Emma's hand moved from his chest to his face, her fingers tracing the line of his jaw. Maybe I'm learning that safety isn't the same as living. Alex caught her hand, holding it against his cheek, his eyes closing briefly as if in pain. You're going to destroy me. Or save you. We'll find out which. When Alex kissed her, it was gentle and careful, as if she were something precious that might break. Emma rose on her toes, threading her fingers into his dark hair, kissing him back with all the confusion and attraction and terrifying hope that had been building since the moment he'd walked back into the diner. His arms came around her, strong and protective, and Emma felt safer than she had in days, despite knowing that this man, this moment, was the most dangerous thing she'd ever chosen. When they finally broke apart, both breathless, Alex rested his forehead against hers. I can't promise you safe, he whispered. I'm not asking you to. I'm just asking you to be honest with me, to let me choose, and to hold on while we figure out what this is. I can do that. They stood there in the dimming light, wrapped in each other, while outside the windows, New York City continued its endless dance. Somewhere out there, enemies were planning. Dangers were gathering. The world Alex had built was balanced on a knife's edge, and Emma had just chosen to stand beside him on that precarious perch. But in this moment, none of that mattered. There was only Alex's arms around her, his heartbeat steady beneath her ear, and the terrifying, exhilarating knowledge that her life would never be simple again. And for the first time in years, Emma didn't want simple. She wanted this. 3 days later, the fragile peace shattered. Emma was in the library when Marcus burst in, his usual calm replaced by urgency. "Miss Collins, we need to move you to the safe room. Now." Before she could ask why, gunfire erupted outside, sharp cracks that shattered the afternoon quiet. Emma's blood turned to ice as Marcus pulled her toward a hidden panel in the wall that opened to reveal a reinforced room. "Alex," she gasped, "he's handling it. You'll be safe here." The safe room was small but well stocked. Through monitors, Emma watched the chaos unfold. Black SUVs surrounded the building, armed men in the lobby, and Alex, moving with lethal precision alongside his security team, protecting what was his. The Volkovs had made their move. Hours crawled by. Emma watched the screens, her heart in her throat every time Alex appeared in frame. She saw him take down 2 attackers, saw him directing his men with absolute authority, saw the moment when Sergei Volkov himself appeared. The confrontation was brief. Words exchanged, weapons lowered. Then, impossibly, a handshake. When Marcus finally opened the safe room, Emma flew out and straight into Alex's arms. He was bleeding from a cut above his eye, his suit torn, but alive. "It's over," he said into her hair. "Sergei and I reached an understanding. No more attacks. No more threats." "What kind of understanding?" "The kind that costs me territory and money but keeps you breathing." Alex pulled back to look at her face. "Worth every penny." That night, as they stood on the balcony overlooking the park, Emma made her decision. "I'm staying," she said. "Not hiding from your world, but living in it. With you." Alex's eyes searched hers. "You're sure?" "Terrified and sure. It's possible to be both." He kissed her then, deep and claiming, and Emma knew she was choosing danger over safety, chaos over calm, love over fear. 2 months later, Emma started online classes at NYU, literature just like she'd always dreamed. She still helped at community centers Alex funded, finding purpose in the work. She learned to navigate his world, to stand beside him at meetings, to be both herself and the woman at a powerful man's side. The Sunset Diner got a mysterious benefactor who upgraded equipment and raised wages. Dolores knew exactly who was behind it. Emma's mother's care remained funded. The bills stopped being terrifying, and every night Emma fell asleep in Alex's arms, in a life she never planned but couldn't imagine leaving. Some scars ran deeper than physical wounds, but together, they were learning that healing was possible. One day, one choice, one moment of courage at a time. Emma had stitched a stranger's wounds and found her own salvation. In saving him, she'd saved herself.